Usually, like when we talk about decision making, we just kind of assume we're basically rational creatures.
Why?
We look at a menu, we weigh the options, we pick a meal, and we move on. We act like it as this perfectly straight line from observing a problem to just executing a solution.
Yeah, the classical model of the human brain.
Exactly.
We take in the information right in front of us, run a quick calculation of the current variables, and spit out a logical choice based purely on what's happening in the room today.
But then you read something like Notes on Gardening, Part 993.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a blog post published today, August 21st, 2026, by a writer named Ang. And you realize that even staring at a simple houseplant is a decision heavily, heavily influenced by the invisible ghosts of our past.
Absolutely. It's never just a plant.
Right. So today we are taking a magnifying glass to a tiny, highly specific snapshot of a hobbyist's mindset. We aren't analyzing some, massive geopolitical shift. We are looking at a singular, granular moment in one person's day to explore how we actually process failure and really what it takes to completely rewire our perspective.
Which is often, I think, much more illuminating than studying sweeping historical choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you look at the micro level, like someone deciding whether or not to buy a plant, you see the unvarnished mechanics of human psychology. You see how hesitation forms, how context shifts our reality, and how we, negotiate our own limited energy.
I want to start with the title of this post, actually,
Okay.
because it immediately sets the stakes. Notes on Gardening, Part 993, Should We Revisit Nerve Plant? And nerve plant is Fittonia-albivenis.
Right.
But okay, let's just unpack this for a second. Part 993.
Quite a number.
It's massive. I mean, dropping into this blog is like, I don't know, it's like tuning into episode 900 of a soap opera, but for botany.
It really is.
We are getting a glimpse into a very deep, very ongoing passion here.
Yeah, the volume of documentation tells you everything you need to know about the author's relationship to the subject.
Right.
When someone reaches entry 993 in a public log, they are not dabbling.
No.
They have built a fully realized architecture of thought around this subject. They've spent thousands of hours observing and failing, succeeding, and cataloging.
So that level of commitment, I mean, it means every new decision carries the weight of 992 previous experiences.
Exactly. Every single one.
So Ang is at a garden center, right, looking at a nerve plant. And Ang notes that this plant is everywhere.
That's very common.
Yeah, they see it frequently at various nurseries and garden centers. It's not some rare, elusive orchid you have to, trek into the Amazon to find.
Right.
It is right there in plain sight, just on a regular Tuesday.
It is omnipresent in their environment, which makes the avoidance of it all the more fascinating.
Right, because Ang admits to being perfectly aware of this species. They even looked into cultivating it, and I'm quoting the text here, many moons ago.
Many moons.
But then we get this incredibly ominous sentence. Ang writes, past experiences kept me from pursuing it further.
Yeah, past experiences.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. I want to push back on this for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Are we over-intellectualizing this?
How so?
Well, Ang just says past experiences. Ang doesn't say the plant died tragically in a fire.
Right.
Isn't it highly likely they just, I don't know, forgot to water a houseplant in 2018, it dried up on a windowsill, and that was that?
Sure.
So why treat this like a profound psychological hurdle? How much does our past baggage really dictate what we avoid today, even when it's just sitting there innocently in a garden center?
Well, it dictates everything because of the context of the hobbyist.
Okay.
If someone who doesn't care about plants kills a fern, they just throw it in the trash and never think about it again.
Right. It's just garbage.
But remember, this is part 993.
Yeah, the soap opera.
Exactly. Yeah. In any detailed pursuit, whether it's gardening, woodworking, coding, restoring cars, previous struggles don't just vanish. They register in the brain as a sunk cost. The vagueness of that phrase, past experiences, is actually the tell here.
What do you mean by that? The vagueness is the tell.
Yeah, so the brain is incredibly efficient at risk aversion.
Okay.
When you invest time, money, and emotional energy into a specific hobby, a failure hurts. It genuinely stings.
Oh, for sure.
So your brain tags that specific object or task as a danger zone. And over time, the specific details of the failure, like the overwatering, the wrong soil, the aphids, whatever it was.
The technical stuff.
Right. The technical stuff fades away. The brain discards the granular details because it doesn't need them to protect you. It just leaves behind a big red flashing stop sign.
Wow. Okay. So the memory of the friction outlasts the memory of the actual event.
Exactly. It's just a feeling of avoidance. So every time Aang walks through a nursery and sees the fittonia-albivenis sitting innocently on a shelf, the amygdala fires up.
The lizard brain.
Yep, and it silently whispers, "We've been down this road. It didn't end well. Keep walking." It doesn't matter that the plant is harmless. It has become a symbol of a past, unspecified hurdle.
This totally reminds me of when everyone was baking sourdough in 2020.
Oh gosh, the sourdough phase.
Right. I made a starter, and it completely ruined my kitchen.
Oh no.
It smelled like a brewery, there was flour everywhere, and the bread, like the final product, it came out like a literal brick.
A dense brick.
Yeah, you could have built a house with it. If you hand me flour and water today, I will instinctively just walk away.
Right.
I don't even remember the recipe I used. I don't remember the hydration ratio. I just remember the defeat.
The defeat.
Yeah, my brain flags it as a sunk cost.
That is the perfect real-world translation. You have a metal block, basically an invisible fence around sourdough.
Yeah, keep out.
And to break through an invisible fence, you don't just need a pep talk.
No.
You need a structural shift in how the information is presented to you,
Right.
which is exactly what happens in text.
Right. Which brings us to the pivot in Aang's post. Because if the plant was effectively blacklisted by Aang's past experiences, what on earth broke the cycle of avoidance?
It's the best part.
It doesn't happen at a specialized botanical garden. It doesn't happen at a master class on horticulture.
No,
It happens during a recent trip to a fish store.
of all places.
A fish store.
Right.
Aang writes that seeing the nerve plant grown inside a terrarium at this fish store prompted a total reconsideration of the species. Suddenly the mental block is just gone, but how does that actually work?
Well, think about context.
I mean, it's just like seeing your strict, buttoned-up accountant at a heavy metal concert.
That's a great image.
Right. A totally different setting completely rewires your brain about who or what they are.
It does. It shatters the preconceived notion.
So the fish store was the heavy metal concert for this plant.
Exactly. And to use another analogy, it's like trying to build a piece of IKEA furniture with your bare hands.
Oh, boy.
Right. Failing miserably, sweating, crying, and swearing off IKEA for the rest of your life.
Valid response.
But then you go to a friend's house, you see an Allen wrench sitting on their counter, and suddenly you realize how the furniture is actually supposed to be built.
Ah.
The fish store terrarium was Aang's Allen wrench.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's a visual proof of concept.
Exactly. It illustrates the mechanism of context-dependent memory.
Okay, unpack that. Context-dependent memory.
So, when Aang sees the plant in a standard garden center, the brain pulls up the standard memory.
Right.
The plastic nursery pot, the dry air in the living room, the past failure. But a fish store terrarium radically alters the environmental variables.
Because it's enclosed.
Right.
It solves a specific problem. Aang explicitly notes in the text that the terrarium highlighted the plant's, quote, high humidity requirements.
And here is how context-dependent memory works in real time. The brain encodes memories alongside environmental cues. By removing the plant from the nursery setting and placing it in a terrarium, a high-humidity, aquatic adjacent environment, the brain fails to trigger the old anxiety response.
Wow, it short-circuits the fear.
It does. It bypasses it completely. Instead, it triggers a new problem-solving pathway. Aang sees the humidity needs being perfectly tangibly met in that enclosed glass box.
And instantly, the brain starts mapping that success onto their own life.
Yes.
Aang realizes, according to the post, that this plant could be cultivated near their own outdoor ponds.
The fish store provided the missing puzzle piece. It bridged the gap between a past failure and a future possibility.
Yeah.
Aang didn't need to be told the plant likes humidity in a book. They needed to see a thriving system that maintained that humidity.
You needed to see it working.
Right. Once the environmental problem is solved visually, the fear just evaporates.
And what I find so fascinating looking at the exact text here is what happens immediately after the fear evaporates.
Oh, the description.
Yes,
Okay.
because Aang doesn't just say, okay, the pond will work. They start describing the plant with this intense, newly unlocked sensory appreciation. They write about the intricate foliage, and they specifically focus on the, quote, reddish lattice pattern contrasting against the bright green leaves.
It's so vivid.
It's incredibly vivid. But they couldn't even see that beauty, or at least they didn't write about it, until they were standing in the fish store.
That's because we often assume aesthetics are objective.
Like a pretty leaf is just a pretty leaf.
Right. But human psychology dictates that we literally cannot allow ourselves to fully appreciate the beauty of an object if we believe we are destined to destroy it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, fear of failure actually suppresses aesthetic appreciation.
Because it hurts too much to love something you know you're going to ruin.
Exactly. When the plant was at the garden center, Aang's brain was in defensive mode.
Walls up.
Walls all the way up. Don't look too closely. Don't get attached. Past experiences say we fail at this.
Right.
But the terrarium removes the defensive posture. It provides a safe context.
Yeah.
Once the brain says, wait, we have a pond, we can actually keep this alive, the logic gates open, and the visual beauty comes rushing in.
It's safe to look now.
Exactly. The contrast of the reddish lattice against the bright green leaves finally registers as Aang puts it, definitely eye-catching.
It's a beautiful moment of clarity.
It is.
Aang has the perfect spot near the outdoor ponds. They have the inspiration from the fish store. They have the deep appreciation for the contrasting foliage. Everything is perfectly aligned for a trip back to the nursery.
Yep.
But then, screeching halt.
A very hard stop.
Aang hits the brakes hard. And despite the inspiration, the execution just stops.
Which is honestly the most realistic part of the entire post.
Right.
Inspiration is weightless, but execution has friction.
Let's talk about that friction, because I think the roadblocks Aang actually outline speak volumes about how we talk ourselves out of things.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean? The first drawback Aang explicitly mentions is economics.
The price tag.
Right. They note the, quote, high price of individual plants based on what they've seen at these nurseries. But then there's a second drawback that completely changes the scope of the project.
The alternative location.
Yeah. Aang realizes that if the outdoor pond idea doesn't work out, the alternative is using an underutilized front balcony to build a terrarium. But they immediately follow that up with this incredibly relatable caveat. They say, assuming I want to build a terrarium at all.
You can practically hear the sigh of exhaustion in that sentence.
Oh, I read that and laughed out loud.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder, is this really about the high price of the plant? Or is it the sheer mental exhaustion of having to build a whole new terrarium on a balcony?
Well, the text reveals a classic cost-benefit analysis.
Okay.
But it's layered. It is a textbook example of the cascade effect of new projects.
Yeah, cascade effect. Okay.
Yeah. Let's break down the mental steps Aang is taking in a matter of seconds.
Go for it.
Step 1. Identify the high price of the fittonia-albivenis. Now, in the mind of a seasoned hobbyist, an expensive plant isn't just a casual purchase.
No.
It's an investment that must be protected.
You can't just wing it and hope for the best if it's pricey. You have to guarantee it survives, otherwise you've just wasted that money.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So that leads to step 2. How do you guarantee survival for a humidity-loving plant?
You have to control the environment perfectly.
Right. Step 3, how do you control the environment? You build a terrarium.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Step 4, where does a terrarium go? It requires space, it needs light, it needs structural support. It goes on the underutilized front balcony.
Oh man, it escalates so fast.
It really does.
It's the free puppy phenomenon.
The free puppy.
Yeah, like someone offers you a free puppy and you think, great, free dog.
Right, cute puppy.
But the reality is the dog requires a 6-foot fence, $1,000 in vet bills, a recurring budget for premium food, and, waking up at 5 a.m. every day for the next decade in the freezing rain.
Exactly.
Buying the pretty plant with the red lattice pattern has suddenly escalated into a major architectural and labor-intensive construction project on a balcony.
And that is the cognitive load Aang is processing when they say, assuming I want to build a terrarium at all.
It's so heavy.
They aren't just doubting their desire for the plant. They are negotiating with their own future energy reserves.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Future energy reserve.
Yeah, they're simulating the labor, the mess of the dirt, the sourcing of the glass, the actual maintenance of the balcony. The friction isn't just financial.
No.
It's the sudden realization of the time and labor required to execute the vision. The friction of execution suddenly outweighs the inspiration of the fish store.
The realization of what it actually takes to do something correctly is just paralyzing sometimes.
It is.
And so, facing this cascade of labor and cost, Aang comes to a conclusion that I think resonates with absolutely anyone who has a passion project. Aang concludes that if the balcony terrarium project doesn't happen, the fittonia-albivenis will simply stay on a, quote, long pending and ever-growing bucket list.
The bucket list.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating psychological construct, especially in the context of a hobby.
I mean, it's exactly like my podcast queue. Or, the precarious stack of books on my nightstand that literally threatens to crush me in my sleep.
We all have that stack.
It is full of highly recommended, beautiful, fascinating things that I swear I will get to, and the pile just keeps growing.
Yeah.
But usually when we talk about a bucket list or a to-be-read pile, we talk about it with a lot of guilt.
True.
It's like a graveyard of good intentions. So is Aang just giving up here? Are they throwing in the towel because the terrarium is too much work?
I actually don't read it as giving up at all.
Really?
Yeah, look at the tone of the final sign-off. The post ends very simply, quote, "Till the next post. Yours truly, Aang."
It's very calm.
Very calm. There's no hand-wringing. There's no self-flagellation about being lazy.
Yeah, there's no guilt.
There is a profound sense of peace with this decision. And this is where we have to reframe how we view unfinished business.
Okay, reframe it how?
Culturally, we view a bucket list as a source of shame, a list of things we are failing to do right now.
Right.
But in the context of a lifelong pursuit, a bucket list is not a graveyard of failures. It is a strategic holding pen.
A strategic holding pen. I like that. I really like that framing.
It's where good ideas wait until the budget, the physical energy, and the context finally align to support them.
That is so freeing.
Aang has done something incredibly productive here, actually.
Because they cleared the mental block.
Exactly. They went from a vague, anxiety-inducing mental block, past experiences kept me from pursuing it, to a very clear logistical assessment.
Yeah.
They acknowledge that the plant is beautiful. They acknowledge that the terrarium concept from the fish store is biologically sound.
Right.
But they also clearly calculate the true cost, time and money, and recognize that they don't have the energy for it today.
So it goes into the holding pen. It's preserved, not abandoned.
Exactly. It was a form of cognitive offloading. Aang is essentially saying, I have solved the intellectual puzzle of how to successfully grow this plant.
Right, the mystery is gone.
I know the requirements, I know the aesthetic value, and I know the structural needs. That is enough for today. The mental block has been cleared.
It's a huge shift.
The plant has been elevated from a symbol of failure to a symbol of future potential.
Someday, when the time is right.
And in the life of a hobbyist, shifting something from avoid at all costs to someday is a massive psychological victory.
It really, really is. And I think that's why this tiny glimpse into a gardening journal, part 993 out of nowhere, is so compelling.
Definitely.
You do not need to be a gardener to relate to Aang's journal entry. You don't need to know the first thing about high humidity requirements or what a nerve plant even looks like.
Not at all. Because it is a universal micro-study in how we process new information and negotiate with ourselves.
Exactly. We all navigate the world just like this. First, we bump up against our past baggage.
The vague past experiences.
Right, that act like invisible fences, telling us to say no without even fully remembering why. Then, if we're lucky, we stumble into a new, unexpected context.
Our own version of a fish store terrarium.
Yes. The Allen wrench that makes the impossible look possible, and it challenges those old assumptions. It rewires our brains.
And it allows us to see the reddish lattice pattern anew. It allows us to appreciate the beauty of a possibility without the cloud of past failure.
But then, crucially, we don't just blindly jump in based on that flash of inspiration. We step back and carefully calculate the true cost.
We do the math on the cascade effect.
You look at the time, the space, the money, and the energy it will demand of us to do it right. And sometimes, the healthiest, most self-aware thing we can do is acknowledge the friction, put the idea into our strategic holding pen, and peacefully say, till the next post.
It is masterclass in measured enthusiasm.
Okay.
It's about knowing what you are actually capable of executing in the present moment while intentionally keeping the door open to future possibilities.
Which is a remarkably healthy way to live.
It is.
We're going to wrap up our discussion of Aang's journal here, but I want to leave everyone listening with a final provocative thought to mull over based on this text.
I love this part.
We've talked deeply about Aang's bucket list and the piece of putting things on hold. I want you to think about a specific item on your own ever-growing bucket list.
Oh, this is a good challenge.
Maybe it's a home renovation project, a dense nonfiction book, a trip you've always wanted to take, or a complicated new skill you want to learn. Look at it closely today.
Really look at it.
Is it really the financial cost or the sheer difficulty of the task that's keeping it stuck on that list? Or are you just waiting to stumble into your own version of a fish store terrarium to finally see how it naturally fits into your life?
A simple shift in environmental context might be the only thing standing between an old failure and a new success.
Sometimes you just need a new backdrop to make the impossible feel completely achievable. Thanks for exploring the deep end of the garden with us today.